All right, what is up, me Duole podcast listeners? Stuart Anderson here with just a short introduction before we get on with Matt Johnson from The Feed. So grateful for The Feed and our new partnership with them. They are sponsoring the Me Duole team, and everybody on the team is gifted an $80 credit for the year. We have a special Feed landing page where you can go and claim your credit, start shopping and getting all that lotion and creams. You know you need it. So anyway, we talked to Matt. Matt explains the history of The Feed, how it was created, the purpose, and just kind of blows our mind with how much he knows about his products. He talks about how the products are introduced. He talks about how they test them. He talks about how much he knows about each of the products because of his extensive background researching them, using them, and watching his athletes use them. So it's fun to have Jason Lang on here. Jason has like a really cool knowledge of how products are made, and especially like the pharmaceutical side of products. So fun to have Jason as the co-host. Anywho, great little podcast. Thankful for The Feed. Thankful for their partnership with us, and grateful to share this one with you. Enjoy. All right, welcome to Me Duole podcast. Stuart Anderson here, joined by co-host Jason Lang. What's up, Jace?
Hey.
If you're watching the video, Jace is freshly back from Kona. Like, that's not a video filter. That is Kona tan, man.
It's the golden glow.
We are joined by Matt Johnson. Welcome, Matt, from The Feed.
Thank you, guys.
We're grateful to have you. Matt, I didn't ask where you're joining in from. Are you in Colorado?
Yeah, I'm in our headquarters / distribution center in Broomfield, Colorado.
Very cool.
Just
So as many of you know, Matt is the one that personally sends you all the texts and emails from The Feed now that we have joined in as a squad. We were introduced to The Feed through Melissa Rollins just a few episodes ago. And you guys know Melissa. After the podcast was over, she sent me this gigantic box of like waffles and stingers and gels. And it was from The Feed. And she said, this is like a gift box, a thank you. And dude, I was overwhelmed with how cool it was. And I know Jason uses The Feed long before this happened, but that was really my introduction to the company. And from there, we just started to steamroll, meeting Matt, meeting Elise, meeting the ambassador program. Then the team joined as like a team that is sponsored by The Feed. Everybody gets $80 as a credit to The Feed. And that's been rolling now for the past month. And then we said, hey, if Matt's available, which he was, let's hear the story of The Feed, his story, how it started, how the products are chosen. And that is kind of where we got to this point, which I think is so fun that we're kind of connecting together to ask Matt all about what he does and what this cool company does. Anyway, before we roll into that was like a long introduction. Jace, any announcements? Anything going on?
No big announcements. We've got some races coming up. If anybody's interested, we have the one up in Idaho that's a TT crit race and road race. And then Midvale Crit is the next week, is same with the Bear Lake 100.
Yeah,
so
Bear Lake.
I'm sure we'll get some teammates joining those.
Yeah, nice. And then we're getting the discount code. I should produce it with this podcast for Wasatch All Road. So we're going to get a 20% off for the gravel race from Bentham, Wasatch All Road, which is August, I think. Yeah, August. So, and then we're doing kit pickup. So spring, summer kit orders are going to be shipping to us end of May. And then we should be getting them. We're hoping to get the pavilion in Sugar House Park on June 7th. And Chip's suggestion, we're going to do a potluck dinner, Jason. Yeah, that's what I did. Sponsored by The Feed with waffles and stingers. So
that's anyway. Right.
Hey, I got to introduce Matt, and then we're going to turn the time over to him. So Matt is founder of The Feed, and that story is really cool. We'll get into that soon. But he used to be the president of what was the Garmin cycle team, Cannondale team, and then the EF Pro cycle team. And he just told us he did that for over 10 years. Avid ski racer, and has won a dozen Masters World Cup races. And a few years ago was the Masters SG world champ. Dude, what is up? How cool is that? Does that come with like a patch or a
Oh, it comes with a crystal globe.
Crystal globe.
Yes.
It was like my version of a midlife crisis. Like having been an endurance athlete all my life, I was like, oh, I could do a strength sport. Let's try this. So
Awesome. Well, Matt, I think had a firsthand knowledge of what was happening when it comes to nutrition and feeding and recovery and all the things that were in and around a professional cycle team, which led to the creation of the feed, which led to understanding products, understanding delivery, and understanding what endurance athletes really need to succeed. And that was growing the feed. And Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, 8 years ago, I mean, how long has the feed been around?
yeah, it's been around for a while, about 8 years now. And it's had a few, great team was sort of running it. I was really more the investor. I was, pretty busy running the team. And a couple of guys that work for the team were sort of leaving and they wanted to start up a e-commerce business. And I said, listen, I've got this idea, but I don't have time to do it. I'll fund it if you guys want to sort of take it on. And they did a great job sort of establishing in the marketplace, building the brand. But in hindsight, someone should have stopped me when I sort of said, oh, I'm going to sell $1 Cliff Bars and try to make, and then ship them for free and like try to make money on it. Like it was like a classic, this doesn't add up. Like you can't make any money doing this. This is a terrible business idea. But the problem was I wound up not realizing that and wound up investing enough money in it that we actually had to solve it before my wife would kill me. So I was like, okay, we got to make this into a real business. And some new guys came in, some with some industry experience, and they really helped sort of scale the business. They had a broader vision of not the feed, not just being, nutrition. Well, that's still like, was the origin and the heart of what we do. We really shifted our focus more to human performance and sort of what are all the products like, that we want for human performance. And I love every new product and try every new thing. So it was sort of like, for me, it was like the ideal job. I could like take my hobby of like buying every gadget, for performance or Theragun-esque type thing or supplement or new bar. But now I have a 40,000 square foot warehouse with all of them. So
Nice.
it was sort of like a dream, a hobby becoming a business.
Maybe you could start with Matt talking about your background in endurance sports with, I mean, I could talk for an hour here of all the stories you could probably share from the cycle team alone, but maybe start there, just what that was like, the life that you lived running that EF Pro education team.
Yeah. So I grew up as a bike racer, or I grew up as a ski racer until I was like 14 and realized that was too cold and I wanted a warm weather sport and was racing. And you can race in Quebec. I'm from Canada, and Quebec, you can race really young. You can start at age 10. There's crits every weekend that my parents would drive me to Montreal. I could go race my bike. So sort of had the bug really early. By age 15, I was flying to Europe for the spring and the summer to race like as a junior in Belgium, and did that for a few years. And then, in Switzerland, and I did my last year junior, did like the World Cyclocross Championships when that wasn't really a thing for Americans to go over there and do.
Nice.
And it was sort of a fun learning experience. But then quickly realized that maybe there was a better job path in early internet companies in sort of the mid 90s. So I was down training in California for the winter. So, left cycling, got into tech for 10 years, really missed it. And then 10 years later, sort of came back into the sport, and a few opportunities presented themselves. And one of them was Doug Ellis and Jonathan Botters, who were starting Slipstream, which was the owner of the Garmin, which would become the Garmin team. Well, I joined and then brought Garmin in and brought in all the other partners. And so my role was really the business side, while I, also loved working on the human performance side and the nutrition side and finding the latest tech for the team to use. I sort of brought in the money, and, these teams are pretty expensive, 20, 25 million a year. And then JV would sort of spend the money, hiring more riders and buying more buses and things like that. So it's sort of a yin and yang sort of pro cycling. But that was a great experience. And, along the way, we'd show up in Olathe, Kansas with the team to go to Garmin headquarters, or we'd go do a big charity ride. And the questions we'd always get from the audience to the riders were like, hey, when do I take this gel thing? And everyone would giggle. And the riders would look at them and be like, oh, I don't know how to answer that question. So I'd like have to step out. It's like, okay, well, like, how long's your ride? How, when this is when you should take it. And it was amazing. It was like every single Q&A town hall we did, there were like 5 or 10 questions that were just purely about nutrition. And then I sort of got this realization that like this audience was well informed about nutrition, healthy lifestyle. They get breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but they had no concept of sort of this performance nutrition of like before, during, and after training. And, why would they? They never got exposed to that. They entered into sort of endurance sports, maybe at age 30, 35, maybe even 40. And there was never a reason to learn how to use these products. So the idea of the feed was like, if there's this much gap in the marketplace, there's got to be an opportunity here somewhere to marry the education of how to use these products with the products themselves, right? Because Amazon's not going to tell you how to fuel your marathon, right? Like that's not their business. Can't even get someone, like try talking to someone, let alone getting any advice. So we realized that was an opportunity. The other thing I was also super frustrated with, or I'd see this on the team. I won't name any sponsors, but we've had sponsors. And by the time we would get to the Giro, like exactly this time of year, the guys would all be leaving the team bus and they'd be going over to other team buses like 20 minutes before the start. I'm like, what the hell are they doing? And they're like leaving with like bags of Cliff Bars in that case, or some other brand. And they're like swapping for other products because they had like flavor fatigue. They're like, I can't eat another one of that flavor. So they go like, oh, Jumbo's got good ones. Or, back then it was like Movistar or Astana or whomever had like the good other one that they wanted. Not that it was any better, it was just different. And so we realized like people need to rotate this. They need different flavors. They need different brands. But, when you're locked into buying like 12 or 18 of something, it's hard to get through them all. And in my house, they were always going stale because I couldn't eat another one of those. And so we, again, maybe not a great business idea, but we said, well, let's just break open the box. Why do they have to buy 12? Let's just sell them one. So they could buy one of this flavor, one of that flavor, one of this brand, one of that brand. And I'll tell you now, 80% of the boxes that I see on the conveyors here going out every day, it's all ones and twosies. People are buying like 3 of this flavor, 4 of that flavor, 4 of this brand. Like they get it. They're mixing it up and they're getting this sort of, potpourri of different products that is like totally personalized to them. And they've found their favorites and they go use it. And I love to see that because that was sort of the original idea.
Very cool. And maybe Jace has got a question, but before we do that, let's pretend that you're listening and you're an idiot. You don't know anything about what's going on. Will you just explain the purpose of what the feed is real quick? In case someone has no idea what you're talking about. Yeah,
absolutely. So the feed is an online store, again, I have to use sort of the Kleenex analogy. It's sort of an Amazon of human performance, so we've taken a subset of categories that everything the athlete needs to fuel their lifestyle, right? The nutrition they need for their ride, what are they going to eat for breakfast? We solve that. What are they going to do afterwards to recover? We solve that. And then, what are they doing if they're, really out there taxing themselves? Do they need additional sort of nutrient support in the way of supplements? Are there certain supplements that are both legal, but also performance boosting? And there's a whole category of those that we, heavily curate. We don't just sell anything, everything we sell, we try and use. And then there's also been this huge exploding business of like gear items, whether it's like a core body temperature thing or a Normatec or, UFO sandals, everything, that the athlete lifestyle needs. That's our focus. And that's what we sell.
Nice.
That's so cool. I was just going to say that's my favorite part about the feed is because we live in a time where there's a constant barrage of new products that are sometimes just Me Too products, more of the same, but different flavors and a different delivery mechanism and things like that. And you just want to try so many things and you just want to try all the different flavors. So being able to do a variety pack of everything is just the best. Nobody else does that. I mean, like you said, everybody else, you have to buy, a huge pack of whatever 12, 15 goos or gels or bars and then waste them if you don't like them, and try and give them away to your teammates or something like that, and then move on to the next thing. So the feed really did solve that problem. It's nice.
Yeah, and we made it, we figured out how to make it cost effective. I have a software background, and we brought in a team, and we wrote every piece of software that runs the warehouse, and and automated as much of that as possible, so we can as efficiently pick a $1 item as a $20 item, and get in your box within 2 minutes of sort of the order. It takes us about 2 to 3 minutes to pick each order, and it's getting, as the volume goes up, we had a whole team in here today installing robots that are moving the shelves and moving the products. And it's one of the big things for me in the business is our goal is always to ship every order within 2 hours of it getting here. And listen, that hasn't always been possible. Like, we get these waves, and and especially with COVID and staffing and hiring and having the right flows, but we've really hit our stride now. So our goal is, you place an order, within 2 hours, it's basically packed in a box and going out the door to you.
Very cool.
That is really cool.
Go ahead, Jace. You've got a bunch of questions on our little outline. You want to ask one?
Yeah. The first one I want to ask, though, before the outline is, so you seem to be incredibly involved without having the official title as like any of the executives, right? You're not the CEO or anything. You're the founder, but you're very involved in curating products, trying all the products, implementing technology. I mean, what is your day-to-day role at the feed?
I think I am technically the CEO as well, but
okay.
I'm not big on titles so much. So I feel like people just, we sort of work as a great team. It was a very, very small team. We were really like 5 or 6 people in the front office until last year, when, finally got to the point where we really needed to grow. We're probably a little under like 70 people in total now in the company. So it's grown, not just from 6, but the front office. I've got a great team now that does marketing and social media and and product management, and and some of the products that we make ourselves, we have to manage all the supply chain and the manufacturing of those. So there's an awesome team here that I get to work with every day. So I focus as much as I can on the products, what's new, what's coming in, have we tried this? Should we carry this? Should we not carry this? Getting it out to athletes to test, talking to athletes that are testing the products and saying, hey, what'd you think? Did you like it? Did you not like it? At the heart of it is like, what we're recommending is something that, as you mentioned before, I tend to write a lot of emails, and I do write all of those. Is this something I feel like I can write an email and recommend to our audience? And that bar every year gets higher and higher. So, it gets more and more challenging, but at the same time, there's tons of people making really innovative new products. And so we always want to be on the cutting edge. And I'm hearing, like, from the World Tour side, hey, what did that team just use? Oh, wait, that team's using this. So I sort of use that, my old network, and, cycling's very incestuous, where, over 10 years, we had a lot of employees, and those guys are now, soigneurs, doctors, nutritionists, directors at all these other teams. So we have like a really broad network to sort of hear, what they're doing. And also we're selling to a lot of those teams. I think at least half the World Tour are fairly significant customers here, and we're shipping the stuff over to Europe, either where they don't have a sponsor in a category and they want something, or, ketone esters or other products like that. We're a big supplier to them as well.
Very cool.
That's awesome. Well, let's jump into that then. On that note, what are some of your favorite products? You've tested everything. You're a current and former athlete, you're a cyclist, you're a skier, all of the things. What are the things that us, are the dads in 30s, 40s, and 50s need to be taking to keep our minds and bodies sharp?
Yeah, I'm ready for my midlife championship crisis. Like, what should I be taking?
Yeah. So you're sort of asking me, like, this is what my kids ask me all the time. I tell each one of them they're my favorite. So, sort of like whoever, got me coffee in the morning or something like that, like, you're definitely my favorite. So I threw that around liberally, to much angst amongst them. But, so that's sort of how I feel about the products. They're all like, we're not selling it if we don't love it, but let me give you sort of the 3-minute sort of view of like how we recommend fueling at a sort of a general level, and then some
Nice.
of the sort of other ones, which is, first we always start with hydration. The problem is, if you don't hydrate, you're never, nothing else I recommend after this is going to work, right? If you have to maintain electrolytes and proper fluid and proper hydration, and you can get really complicated, like, are you sweating a liter an hour, pretty good, normal for most people in a warm situation or indoor training, and then how many electrolytes are you excreting? 600 milligrams, 800 milligrams, 1500 milligrams. It could range. So hydration's key. Lots of choices. Lots of them have extras and different angles, and that's always sort of a way to go. But just make sure that you're, at that sort of golden rule of about a bottle an hour, and you're getting in sort of the proper hydration. And because, like I said, as soon as you get the one thing about hydration is once you get below, or you have sort of insufficient levels of hydration, you can't recover in that workout. You got to wait till the next day before you're going to recover. You could maybe get a little behind on carbs or, glucose intake and then catch up even during a long workout. Not advisable, but you could. You can't do that on hydration. So rule 1 is hydration. Rule 2 is really the trend around carbohydrates. And we really try to talk to our athletes about, don't think about calories anymore, if that's how you were thinking about it, or calories per hour. Just focus on carbs per hour. If you're an endurance athlete, that's your fuel. That's what you need to focus on. And I go through, sometimes when we're explaining it, we go through a little bit of history of this. Like, some of us might remember the sort of the Cytomax days, great product, but, and guys were getting lots of carbs, but they were also like, having little pit stops all the time on the side of the road, or not feeling quite their best. So, that's where I feel like, folks like Alan Lim and Stacey Sims, really were innovative in saying, this is a real problem. Like, yeah, sure, their guys aren't getting their fuel, but what's happening is because they're feeling sick, they're not drinking from their bottle. So then they're not hydrating. And to my first golden rule, they're getting behind on their hydration. So let's get the carbs out of the hydration. Let's make a great, electrolyte hydration and have them fuel using gels, chews, other real foods, whatever they want to do. And that worked. That really, really well for 4 or 5 years. And then, like, in the world tour, like 2012, there was this whole focus on like metabolic flexibility and keto and fat burning. And you have to go out for 6 hours and you're not going to eat, and you're going to become this like fat burning machine. And, that was probably not a great strategy for a lot of folks, but like Sky was doing it, and like they knew, so like everyone else had to do it. And, there is some, valid points to be able to burn, higher percentage of fat versus carbs in these long races as an advantage. But, it was to the detriment of not bringing in enough carbs. Now, like 2016, 17, this like, Morton comes out, like in Sweden. We hear about this new product. We heard it about Kipchoge breaking the 2-hour marathon really early on. And I sort of like researched it, found this like domain registration to this guy Olaf, and like I figured out his phone number was on it. It wasn't private, so I like called him up and I was like, hey, you don't know me, but I hear you're making this. I'm not sure it's real, but if it's real, I'm coming to like Sweden tomorrow. And he's like, no, it's real. You can come. I was like, okay, great. Turns out there's a flight from like Oakland to like Stockholm. So the next day I got on the plane, show up. And he's like, wait, you came? Like, I can't believe it. Like, surely it's real. And I still like didn't even believe it till we left. So I was like, okay, well, whatever you have here, I need to take with me. So I like took everything I had, and before I got on the plane, I like FedExed it to the team. And they were like just starting the Giro that year. And normally it wasn't so much to like try it in the race. Like I would never suggest that. And the guys went out on a training ride, and the nutritionist was like, hey, do you guys want to try this? Like on the rest day. They're like, yeah, we'll try it. And they all came back. It's like, oh no, we loved it. And they're like, oh, this is great. And then, so the next day they go and race with it. And Pierre Roland, I think it was Pierre Roland, like wins the stage. And he hadn't won a stage since I think like Alpe d'Huez, like 3 or 4 years before. And he's like, this stuff's amazing. And he was a guy actually was notorious for like really struggling to eat during the race. So the high carb was like game changing for him. And, that rolled out. I won't go into more stories, but like more of these riders, all of a sudden we had this high carb drink. Other teams didn't have it. And we were like starting to get these great results that we were really surprised by. So we really started to understand the critical importance of carbs per hour. And so you're looking at about 80 grams of carbs per hour is like our sort of starting point for most athletes. And when we talk to people, we're like, hey, how much are you eating? Let's add it up. Inevitably, everyone's like, oh, I eat a ton. And they're maybe breaking 40 or 50 grams of carbs per hour. Like so few are like already at 80. And now we have a lot of the guys now pushing 100, 120 and even up there. So it's pretty remarkable the amount of carbs per hour that you need. And it's literally jet fuel, right? Like if you can keep that coming in, you're going to, as these long workouts, you're going to have a deficit, right? So most people are probably burning, let's call it like 3 grams per minute. So you're talking about you're burning 180 grams an hour in like moderate to intense sort of exercise. You're never going to replenish all of that, right? So you're always building up a deficit. It's a question of like, how long can you keep going before you really run out? And so the carbs have been like probably the biggest part of the feed story.
Very cool. Matt, one thing that I found interesting about the feed, which goes along with kind of the direction that you're going, is this personalized coaching program. Maybe just talk about that for a sec, how that works. Because like you were saying, not Amazon. Amazon's just like you buy. This is the cool part about the feed. If you guys don't know about it, could you talk about that, how that coaching works and the advice, the advice that the feed gives?
So we've got a great team of coaches, that are sitting in the room beside me here, and they're available to sort of work with you to build your sort of fueling strategy. So if you're like, I struggle with this kind of product, or I've had these issues in the past, or I'm just doing what was the Logan to Jackson? I'm doing a 200-mile, event for the first time. I have no idea how to fuel for this. Like, give me some advice. They'll walk you through a strategy. They'll like, okay, this is what we're thinking hour by hour. They'll take into any dietary considerations you have, any brand preferences you have, and sort of help curate you, not just like a cart of stuff to buy, but a cart to buy along with the plan of how to use it. And I think that's sort of the fundamental point. And it's totally free. You can do it via chat live. And if they're available, it says, Harrison's available now, for example. Like that means like Harrison's really there. He's the guy that's going to pick up, you're going to hit that thing, and 20 seconds later, you're going to be chatting with him and he'll work through it with you. If you prefer to, don't want to type, you want to call him on the phone, you can do that. Same guys are going to pick up. Or you could just say, hey, here's my issues, send me an email, and they'll reply, within a few hours to get back to you with some
how many coaches are there? How many people have to do that?
There's 8 of them in there right now at a time.
Awesome. Jace, have you ever talked to a coach?
I message coaches every once in a while. There's some questions that come up. Can I treat you as a coach right now, Matt, and ask you a question?
Yeah, do it.
So on our team, we love creams. We love topical creams. We have jokes about them. We talk about them all the time. So if you're going to be recommending a cream to our team, is it AMP? Is it Lactigo? Is it a CBD topical? Is it what's going to give us the most bang for our buck?
Oh, look at him roll his eyes.
I can't answer that question. That's a tough one. So here's so Latigo, the brands may not like this answer, so I'm going to like paraphrase sort of my understanding of the products and my use case. There's a lot in the sensation, right? That Latigo's, there's certainly some functional ingredients, but Latigo's giving you this sort of great menthol feeling. Like I remember like in the back of like the Kermesses in Belgium, like you'd get changed in this little like, wash pan that you'd put your feet in, and the old guys would bring like a thermos of warm water, soapy water that you put your feet in, and then they'd be like this guys, and they're all smoking at the same time, and then you're about to go out and race, and they're like rubbing these different menthol creams, and then it's a little cold, so we're gonna rub this. Like it is like Safe Sport definitely didn't exist at this point. Like this would totally be banned, and there was a lot there, and it's not that far from what that was happening a long time ago when I was racing, different sort of warming and cooling type creams. So that's sort of what you're getting. And there's some data to support that. Obviously AMP has more biotech, and the idea of sort of sodium bicarb, sodium bicarb as its own, there's no question it's enhancer. I think Dr. Sprouse and I did a webinar yesterday, and he was talking about like WADA has a list. I think it's like top 3 things or maybe top 5 things that are like, legal, but like unquestionably a performance enhancer. And I believe, I
want all those things.
Yeah. Well, we can look at one of them is for sure sodium bicarb, and that works. And I also asked Kevin, Dr. Sprouse, what was at the Giro TT, whatever, last week, 11K or 12K, or 11 minutes. It wasn't that long. Yeah. 11 minutes with that uphill at the finish. What percentage of guys were using sodium bicarb? And he's like 80%. And the other 20% would, but they're the guys that just have such GI distress that, they can't do it. Like they can't finish if they take it. So it's not, we don't really sell too much besides the amp lotion and sodium bicarb at this point. There's some new products that that'll be coming out that will go into that space. The challenge is the GI distress is so bad and so difficult to get over for most athletes. We just can't recommend it for the average person. But so AMP does bring some element of that sodium bicarb, and it's super popular with athletes. Another one you didn't talk about, like I'm more interested in the creams when I can't sleep at night and my legs are twitching and like I can't.
Yeah.
They're going crazy. And I love some of the magnesium creams. There's one, Feel Good Labs. Is like sort of got everything in the kitchen sink in it from a botanical standpoint. It's a pretty awesome cream that I like.
Yeah, that sounds good. Everything but the kitchen sink cream. That's what I need.
It's like 18 or 25 different ingredients in there, which is great. There is a new magnesium, like this really crazy French guy makes this crazy magnesium cream that we've been trying to import for a while. He has like very limited production, but I'm hoping to get that in for us in the fall. And that's sort of like where we hear about these odd things, and they're like, I can't make enough for you guys, and we're like, well, like how much can you make? When can we get it? And sometimes it takes us like 2 years to get these products in. We're just working on it, but like it's so exciting when they finally get here, and when we know that they work really well.
Nice. Jace,
that's cool. And
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and so I'm a pharmacist by education, and I had a business where we did a lot of compounding. We did sterile injections and IVs and made lots of different topicals. And we were always getting doctors calling us like, hey, I have this crazy idea. Can you put all of this in some sort of vehicle that can, go through the skin or IV or whatever? So we were kind of playing that mad scientist too, and kind of on the cutting edge of all the new things that were, everybody's trying to defy age. Nobody wants to age. The anti-aging medicine thing is where all the money is going right now. So it was fun to be right on the cutting edge of that. And it sounds like you're right there too with supplements and nutrition and things like that.
We actually look a lot at the biohacking and the anti-aging community more as a proxy of like, oh, if this is working over here, could it work for more like for athletes from a performance standpoint? Because a lot of the focus on anti-aging is around energy, right? Energy production and ATP and, what's happening. And athletes maybe aren't taking it purely from an anti-aging standpoint. They're more interested in saying, hey, I'm overly taxing my body compared to a sedentary person, right? So I'm really pushing my body 2x, 3x. And, that's where we pull in some of those cool products, like the whole NAD space, with either nicotinamide riboside, NR, or NMN as like a precursor to NR. There's some really crazy products that I use pretty much daily. And, I'm not focused on it on an anti-aging standpoint, sort of for the audience more in their 60s, 70s that are sort of more focused on that. But I'm using it more from like, I've got more energy at 4 o'clock to like get that workout in after work. And when it's funny, like Dr. Sprouse and I've used both of them. It's like, I don't know if it works. Can I tell? We're like, I'm not really sure. But then we go off of it And then we go off of it for a month. We're like, oh, this was a bad month of training. And I'm like, energy levels low. And then we go back on it and we're like, oh, I feel a little better again. And it's like, I can't say like empirically, like, hey, this like does X, but every time we're on it, we all feel sort of better, So that's, sometimes enough data for me, at least to, at least maybe not heavily recommend it, but continue to use it myself. So that the anti-aging, like I said, is a great proxy for athletic performance.
So Matt, is that kind of how you decide what makes it onto the feed? Is you try it, and if you like it, if it works, if you feel some sort of benefit from it, then you put it on the shop and recommend it to athletes, or you use your sponsored athletes first and have them try it before you recommend it? Or
We do. We use a lot with our HPT, like high performance team. They're a little bit the guinea pigs, so we do send them stuff to try out and say like, hey, do you like this? Is it working? We definitely try it in house. We're just not that interested in some of the like, unless it's a differentiated story. It's really hard for us to sell it. Like another bar, okay, what's about it? Like, is it like way better? Is it easier to eat? Does it taste better? It's like, okay, it's just, we'll bring it up, but it won't really take off, right? Because there's not a story. Like it has to have like a unique new idea, new concept, or bring something different to the marketplace, and those are the products we jump all over. We really do focus on like ingredient sourcing. Like that's really important for us. Like, are these really ethical ingredients? Like, I hope we're at like the other end of the spectrum of like the GNCs of the world, where it's like mega T, blah, blah, XYZ, that's just like that's the experience that I felt alienated as an endurance athlete walking into that sort of experience. I'm like, I'm not going to take any of these things. This looks terrible. And I was like, there's got to be like actually more science-backed, more performance oriented, cleaner products with more ethical, sort of, sourcing and ingredients that are going into them. And there are like, when it comes to supplements, as you would know in your space, there's different tiers, right? Like, and, the sort of pharma grade sort of supplements are really the brands that we focus on. And Thorne, Clean, Pure Encapsulations, a lot of these actually are, you need a medical license to do it. So, so we only are able to sell them because Dr. Sprouse is sort of, part of the team. And we can do it with his sort of medical oversight and sell these products. Usually they're only available from a physician.
And he's the medical director for EF, right? For the race team?
Yeah, we worked together for the decade I was sort of on the team, sort of built a friendship. I would, consider Kevin, very forward thinking. He runs a Podium, is sort of his sports, practice, and it's really a concierge practice. He sees all sorts of patients, but his majority are more pro athletes, some endurance, but he also has lots of golfers, MMA fighters, triathletes, other baseball player, MLB players. Like he's sort of, from my opinion, sort of the doctor to the sort of pro community, and the person I trust the most. So anytime it's a supplement, anything that's more medical than, I don't run every nutrition bar by him, but anything that's in that other sort of more medical space, we sit down, we review, we make sure that he feels comfortable with it. We also talk about what the protocols probably should be, what the manufacturer is recommending. Does he feel comfortable with those? Like we really want to validate, that these are, it's good science and good medicine that we're talking about. We don't want to be giving medical advice at any level. Like that's not in our skill set, but I don't think it's, but we do the diligence as if we were.
Very cool. I mean, along with that, Matt, when you're interacting with clients and customers, are you hoping or thinking that their best interaction with you is when they're doing customized boxes created by the coaches, or are you seeing more people on like just picking Rip Van waffles and eating them for breakfast? I mean, like how is it that you would see the ideal customer interacting with you to get the best out of the feed?
Yeah, so it's taken us a few years, and I did a blog post called, I think it's called, if you go to the Feed Insider in the top bar of the website, there's like a wealth of the emails I send out and articles, and you can go pretty deep down there. And there's one article, it's sort of getting rolled to the bottom, so we probably need to move it up, but it's called "Do This One Thing to Train Perfectly" or something like that, or have the best workout. And it really talks about this carb strategy. So we really tried to build a framework for fueling that's not brand centric, right? People have a lot of different brand choices. Some might love Hammer, some might love Morton, some love Scratch, some love First Endurance, and I could go on and on and on, right? In terms of brands. And we're not here to necessarily break your allegiance to any of those brands. If they're here, they're good products, and they all have different sort of spins or purposes that may appeal to you or better for your gut, or you tend to just like the taste, whatever it is. So what we're trying to do is give you this framework. And so what we're rolling out this summer is this sort of lightning bolt system. So each lightning bolt, it represents 20 grams of carbs approximately. And your goal is to sort of pick products that equal 4 lightning bolts or 80 grams of carbs in an hour. So if you're doing 3 hours, you're trying to buy basically 12 lightning bolts worth of product to consume over that time frame. So what we're really like, we want to give you advice that's about the science of how to fuel, and then let you pick which of the products that you want to pick underneath that umbrella.
Cool. Very cool.
Oh, that's fantastic. How do you said that you have a lot of your athletes try these things out. How do you become a sponsored athlete of the feed? How are you finding these athletes? We have 2 here locally, Hannah Finchamp that was on the podcast, Melissa Rollins that was on the podcast, and that's here locally. How do you find them? Do they seek you out, or are you looking for them?
Yeah, it's the first year we've done this. Obviously, I have a lot of experience on the team side of it, which actually probably makes me a little more skeptical of the value of sponsoring individual athletes. Having run it from the team side and sold the other side of it, I was like, is there enough value here? We wanted to help athletes more than anything. And we wanted to help some of the best domestic athletes that we felt were strong community leaders more than their performance. So we didn't look at results. Like, results is always a part of it because they're more high profile and everything else, but that was a very, very low factor. And we're looking for like great athletes, great leaders, people sort of inspiring others, that our community of athletes would know and would have interacted with or be inspired by. Like, our community of customers in Utah know Hannah and Mel, and Mel there. So there's I think that was more of our criteria more than anything else. We did focus more on athletes that were competing in what I call community events or mass start type events. We weren't really interested in someone going to say, hey, I'm going to Europe to race, Tour de l'Avenir. Like, that's awesome. We love that. And we'll try to support you with the support we give to the USA Cycling, but you're not really the person. We're looking for the people lining up at BWR. And that's a great example. Like BWR, Alexi won, and Mo won for the women, both, feed HPT athletes. Like, we couldn't ask for anything better. So we've done I think an interesting job picking different athletes. And, what we want to do is support them with products. We're like, hey, you're not locked to a sponsor anymore. Like, you don't have to eat that brand's product. You are free. You can shop any product that you want at the feed. And if you become a good ambassador, and, we also think these athletes should be paid. This is their job and they're doing for it. So, we actually write them a check too, so it's not just product, and, we want to support them. And as that program grows, we hope that our, ability to let them actually live a meaningful lifestyle doing what they love, but we also love to watch, is possible for them. So we try to support them both financially. We help them with a lot of education on products. And it's amazing, whether you're at the world tour level or you're, at Alexi's level, or, there's still a lot of gaps here on the sports science of nutrition and fueling. And it's also because it's also changing too, right? So you might be well-versed from 3 years ago, but now, you're adding ketones and you're doing a different you're using like a Swiss RX, like total recovery shake after your workout, or you're, thinking about breakfast. Like, there's constantly sort of evolving products and strategies that we share with them. And then, of course, they can, sort of kid in the candy store, they can buy whatever they want or pick. Well, we give them credit to purchase whatever they need to sort of fuel their season.
Nice.
We have other tiers too. So
You've done a great job at that.
Oh, thank you. I don't take any credit. Brandon runs all of that here, so I should.
I'm listening to Lance Armstrong talk about it on the Move. I'm listening to Phil Guyman talk about it on his Instagram. I'm listening to the local athletes talk about it. I mean, I've heard it from, top to the bottom. Everybody's loving the feed.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Matt, you've had an interesting front row seat for a lot of endurance sport. Like you've been in this like your whole life. Is there anything that stands out to you that you have seen? Like, let's say you're looking back on your own life and you're talking to young Matt and you're like, hey, I am seeing that the most balanced, happy, and successful people are doing these things. Is there anything that you've seen over your career in your life that you would advise to this group of people and say, hey, you need to be doing this. Definitely don't do that. And then be doing like, what's your top 5, your wisdom?
Oh, geez. The adage always was that I followed, and I know this sounds sort of, it's tough because like the advice I always got was find what you love and make it a job, right? That's the classic sort of, approach to life. And I guess I sort of stumbled my way into it. And I guess what I found was, getting out there and doing something and just following the path always opened up new doors, right? New doors happened and that sort of one thing led to the next that led to the next. And so if I was insulated and not getting out there and doing stuff or following what I loved, not just professionally, but from a sports standpoint, those doors wouldn't open and those ideas wouldn't come about. So I guess that's the only thing I had. No, that's rich to say, but if you have to pay the bills and pay the mortgage and feed the kids, you're sort of like, I got to do this too, right? So it's like, how do you balance both? And I don't think I have a magical answer to that. On the sports side, I think that there's overtraining is probably the biggest issue to performance detriment and people not realizing their fitness goals. I think the people train too much volume, but not enough intensity for the most part. I think that's in a time restrict. If you're a pro athlete and you've got 25 hours a week, it's a different situation. But for us working folks, I think you're always better with the intensity side and, less volume, more intensity, and, you get that recovery in. And, have fun with what you're doing. And I guess the advice I don't follow myself, but makes me a better person, makes me a better person at work is training in the morning, right? Like if I can get myself out of bed and do that morning training, my ADD settles down, I can focus, I'm probably more agreeable and fun to be around. So, I guess that's the training hack is like, can you get it in the morning? And like, listen, that's tough. I can't do it every day.
Yeah, big time. I mean, because you were world champ, was there anything that you were doing at that time that you really saw like things just started happening when you started doing something?
Yeah, there was a real breakthrough for me there. That was sort of a eye-opening moment, which was I could do well in training in skiing. And same thing when I was like 15 and why I stopped. I would get to races and I would just get stressed and I'd be like, I'm skiing like terribly. Like this is not me. Like I know yesterday I was great here, but now I'm terrible. I'm nervous. I'm like jittery. Everything falls apart in the race. And then there was one of the first races I did was, I think it was probably a US championships. And I was living in Aspen and it happened to be local. So I was like, oh, I'll go do this. So I was pretty excited. I was like training for it. I was getting ready. I got to the start. I got out of the start. I go 6 gates down the hill and I get flagged because the guy in front of me fell. And I was like last to go, like, or two at the end to go. I was like, oh, Jesus. So now I got to go all the way up and back. And they're like, hey, you're going to run. And they all waited there, right? Everyone was going home at this point. Like it took another 30 minutes to sort of do the whole loop. And I pull in and I'm cold and like, it was like the worst possible situation. But everyone just stood there and they're like, don't worry, calm down. Don't rush. Take your time. You can go do this. And I sort of took a deep breath and I was like, it didn't matter. I wasn't stressed anymore because like, it's sort of like already like it was forced out of me, right? I already like had exuded all that energy and I went down and I was like so focused that I won. And I remembered that feeling. Like I can still picture being in that gate, 10 years ago. And every time I got to a race, I kept thinking about that. And it would be a trigger to sort of get into a flow state. And some of the books I love are, I'm going to mix up the names, but The Making of Superman and Flow State. And, I'm also forgetting the author here. I should remember. It's the same guy that worked with Red Bull. And he has all these articles about flow state, which I think is the secret to athletic success. Whether it's like your hard interval workout on Trainer Road, the group ride that you have to focus on so you don't get dropped, like every second, make sure you're like, staying in the draft so I'm not getting blown out the back. That ability to get into that sort of flow state is sort of like the rush. That's why we all do this, right? When we can realize that. And I was like, I want to be able to do this like every single time I get out there. And there's definitely some hacks, like if you have some caffeine, that helps. Ketones has been massive, in terms of like getting your brainwaves to a point where you're like closer and closer to sort of getting into that sort of flow state. So the secret for me in ski racing is once I had that experience and I sort of like remembered it and knew what was happening, I was able to do that now in every race. And then I just like, I sort of was unstoppable, a little bit from there.
Very cool. Nice. Jays, any other questions for Matt before we kind of wrap in, come in for a landing?
No, I mean, I really appreciated your insight. I think it's valuable because you've been around and been one of the top athletes in the world. I mean, you've been around these top cyclists. You still are. I mean, even I believe your CEO or your partner is the trainer for Michaela Schifrin, right?
He was
skiing and was. So, I mean, you've had the opportunity to be around everyone. And I think that what you're doing and the kind of the way that you're changing the game, and like you said, giving athletes access to not just first endurance, not just scratch, it's just the best of all the products. What works for you across the board? There's so many good things. Find out what works and what the top athletes of the sport are doing, and you're sharing it. You're not keeping it a secret. Hey, I'm going out and I'm finding this crazy guy in France that's making this thing, and I'm trying to bring it to the feed and give it to everybody, not keep it a secret for, your team or whatever. It's great.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it.
I agree, Matt. You're very authentic. The feed's authentic. Your athletes are the real deal, like Mel and Hannah. Those are the kind of people that like attract us, so it was really fun to be approached by you and our team to partner together. So thank you. Appreciate your time here. Any parting words, Matt? Any concluding remarks?
Oh no, but we're here for your riders, and if they need help, they can email me. They can reach us, Matt at the feed, and that comes direct to me, and I'm always happy to respond. And then they can also chat with the coaches and stuff. And if you ever have a question, don't hesitate. It's not normal like customer service. Like these guys know what they're talking about, and it's a real person. It's never a phone tree or a robot or anything like that. We, like you said, we try to keep it authentic.
Awesome. Do you ever ride here in Utah? Do you ever come here?
I don't think I've ridden. I think I've ridden there when Zabriskie lived there.
Huh.
I think we probably rode there when he was there. Before his
You should come out.
Yeah. Did you guys see Peter Sagan spraying his bike down? He's getting ready to come to ride our mountains. Can't wait.
Oh, he is?
Yeah.
He is?
Yeah. We always see him in Park City and Deer Valley when we're doing the climbs back there. So it's kind of fun to see him. But anyway, you're always welcome.
Okay.
Yeah, come. We can suffer together. The slopes too. I'll ski with you.
That's good.
Nice. All righty, fellas. Thanks so much, Matt. Appreciate your time. Appreciate the feed. And hopefully we can have you on again. Appreciate it.
I just said